Okay, I changed my mind. Rather than doing the RF replacement, the composite video replacement, we're actually going to do something that should be done on Aquarius, mainly because these guys are really big caps and they tend to dry out. So I do have some spare caps here. So we're going to do a real quick recap of the Aquarius. Now, we have a couple of pretty standard electrolytic caps. I think all of these are 10. No, these two are 10. And maybe this one, there's like a 47. So we've got a couple of these. We're gonna do these here, and we'll start with the big one up here. Now this is a 10 mega, whatchamacallit? It is a 10,000 microfarad capacitor. This is the main power unit. This actually is what maintains the power supply. You don't really see these massive caps on modern equipment because this is done with switching based equipment. I'm gonna go ahead and take these off. I know that they're like original and kind of cool, but they're really just in my way. So the first thing we're gonna do is, I've got my desoldering iron over here. We're gonna take these two big caps off because they're right next to each other. Both of them have at least one leg that goes into the ground plane here. So we're gonna desolder them and just take them off to begin with. And this guy here. Now, he has a big blob of solder on the back side that we're gonna take care of, but so this is a 10,000 microfarad. This is slightly smaller one. It's 1,000 microfarad, so it's about half of that. So let's see if we can pop this guy off. It's not too difficult. Let's wiggle him loose, each leg side by side. Normally once they get free they pop off pretty quickly, but here we go. Oh, I see why it's got some of this gum on it. And sometimes they'll do that, but so doing the 1,000 microfarad one first is easier because then you can get to this big leg where they put this big blob of solder. This is probably not a bad cap, but you might as well replace it. The newer ones are you know, a better recipe inside the caps, but we're just going to set this guy aside because we are not going to use him. And we're going to come in from this side and we're going to melt down this massive leg. So this 10K, or sorry, 10,000K resistor, or capacitor, it's getting late, can be fixed. Again, sorry about this, I'm going to turn on the fan because this is old lead-based solder and I don't want to take a chance with it. Try not to breathe it in as it is, but let's see if we can get this guy off of here. I'm going to see if we can get this leg to pop off. It's being a little bit stubborn. Try not to touch it. So it looks like it has some of that adhesive on it as well too. So since we are not going to use this cap anymore, I'm just going to go ahead and trim the leg on both sides. And that'll help us get this goo off the bottom, what they use to hold it in place with sort of a adhesive. Now I'm going to come back in, now that I can get to it, and I'm going to melt these legs down and just pop them out individually. So we've taken two of the caps off. I like to replace caps with their, I like to put caps replacements back in as I get rid of them. That way I don't get them mixed up. Still has a little bit of solder on it. So this will come off now. Okay, so there's those. Okay, so these are good to go. I'm not going to clean the board here, but I'm going to put a couple of replacements back in. So this is the big guy. You want to pay attention to the grounding side. Obviously this big plane here is ground. And on a cap, these arrows point to the side that is the ground. I like to make sure that I keep the value of the capacitor pointing up so that I can read it. Make sure the negative's going to this side here. Toss it in there. Fits just about perfectly. And we'll slide it a little this way, work that leg in place. And now, fortunately, since the cap is so big, it'll just sit in place. We'll resolder it. And I'm just flooding this pin with as much solder as I can. On the positive lead, it's not a problem, but on that negative side, the heat just sucks up into the ground plane. So what I'm probably going to have to do with this ground plane side, I can just barely get it wet. I'm going to use the desoldering iron since it's much hotter, and we're just going to flood this with lots of solder, and that's a much better thing. All right. There's a debate about whether you cut them before or after. I cut them after. Put that there. So we've got that first one in place. Looks good. Doesn't really matter, but if you want to, you can put a little bit of extra solder over here. Stick in place. Oh, that's right. It doesn't like it because of that ground plane. So let's flood a little bit here so it's similar to what we did before. Nice big puddle. Not as necessary over here, but there we go. Good. I melted the side of that caps thing a little bit. All right, so this guy is the 1000. I have these guys here, I believe. 1000 microfarad. Again, we're paying attention to the negative side, which goes into this side over here. Here's, you can tell because the positive side is isolated a little bit. So what on this one was standing straight up. And that's okay, but what I like to do is wherever possible, I like to have some room so I can fold my elements. And I wish I could show that cap, but I just can't. Remember I said that I like to show the markings on it, but if the next person who opens this needs to see that, they can just fold it up a little bit. So I'm going to fold this down. I'm going to hold this in place with a piece of just regular blue painter's tape, just to keep it there and it doesn't tilt up while I'm trying to do this. There's those two legs. Put a real quick dab of solder on them. This one's the positive one, so it should happen pretty quickly. That one's fine, and then again we will, as we did with the other one on the ground plane, we'll use the desoldering iron to melt this down because it's actually much hotter. It's got a better surface area so we can melt this in. Looks good. Okay, looks great. Put that there, straighten this cap up a little bit. Looks good. Flow a little in from the top. There's that. Flow a little bit in on this ground plane, although it is, it's connected on both the top and bottom, so it's not that big a deal. It doesn't seem to want to flow, so let's put a little flux there. That should loosen it up. Oh, it doesn't seem to want to stick. That's weird. That's close enough. It's the ground plane, so it should be okay. So we've got two of our caps done. All right, the next couple we're going to take out is this one here. This one is, I believe, a 2.2 microfarad. I haven't been mentioning the voltages on these. Voltages are important. You need to make sure you at least meet the minimum requirements of the cap you're taking off. This guy right here translates to these 2 pins, so we will take them off. Let's take a look really quickly. Which side is the negative side? The upper side is the negative, this one here. So we'll make sure we replace it that same way. Tough to get out, but there it is. So we're looking for our 2.2s. A couple of them back here. That's 470. That's not it. I think the 2.2s are here. No, it's a 10. This. It's a 1. 47s. $100s. Oh, maybe it's these. $2.2s, here they are. And we said the negative is going on the upper, so my negative lead is, the negative lead is always the shorter one, so we're going to put that through there. And we're going to fold him down like this, so he's out of the way. Take our tape, same thing, should just hold it in place temporarily, it doesn't have to be a super long stay. Solder, solder. Now fortunately this one isn't attached to a big ground plane. I mean, it's connected, but it's not like directly attached, so it's a little easier to melt this one in place. Good lines on both of those. Okay, our 2.2's in place. Put him over there. Nice thing is there's a difference in color between both of these. The new ones are, other than this big one, the new ones are kind of a darkish color or a gray color. Most of these are blue. So here, we're going to fold this ceramic cap out of the way a little bit, and we are pulling up, this one's a 10, and I actually have a couple of them on here, so we're going to pull this 10 off. Negative was to the left-hand side here, so let's remember that. It is right here on these two. Persuade it a little bit more. That side. There's that side. So again, on the top side, the negative is to the left. So there's our 10. I know we've got the 10s right here. Anyway, so what I was saying earlier is when you replace a capacitor, you want to make sure you replace it with a like voltage or greater. It can be greater. Hopefully it's within the same range, but it needs to be a like voltage. It can't be less. So here's the negative side. Again, the leg is shorter on negative. Putting this in here, and we're actually going to fold this downward towards the surface this way. Ease it back in a little bit. Tape it down here while we get that in place. Generally use like one piece of tape for the whole run on these. It must be the ground plane that's not wanting to stick. Oh no, it's actually the 5-volt lead, I think. Okay, those two look good. Take the legs off of those. Make sure that, again, the negative side is over there, which it is. It's folded in place. Okay, we've done 4 of the capacitors. We're halfway done. This guy is another 10 right here. Its negative leg is on the bottom side this time. So we're going to track him to right here. On modern circuit boards, there will be typically some sort of marking, and this leg's being stubborn, on the hole. But in this case, we don't have that. So for us, the negative was on the bottom side of the board, and it's right here. We're going to put another one of those 10s in place. Negative side is the shortest one. It's also marked here, pointing down to that leg. And it's going to go through. We're going to fold this guy towards the VIA2, or sorry, the PLA2 here. And we're going to tape him in place. That's good enough. Solder these. Flux, flux. Solder, solder. We'll double check the legs as we solder the, and we flip it back over. Okay, let's make sure negative side is on the bottom. Perfect. Oh, I took the little sticker off the second PLA, the PLA1. Sorry about that. Whatever it was, I'm sure it's interesting. Oh, it's their little 24 IQ mark. All right, 5 down, 3 more to go. This one is a 1, and the 1s are really teeny tiny. Make sure we're doing the right one here. It is a 1 UF, that is correct. So we are taking this guy off. Negative is to the left. There's these 2 pins here. Move it up. There's the cap. I'm going to persuade it off of there. The leads on the back of this are really long. It's unusual for them to be that long. Just slowly working it out. Okay, negative was to the bottom. That is a 1. And here's our replacement one. Negative is the short leg. It goes to the bottom. It goes to the bottom. So it was folded which way? Just want to make sure I'm doing this the right way. So 1, negative was to the left, not the bottom. Okay, negative is the short leg. We're going to fold it down just like it was here. Tape it in place. Little dab of flux on those to make it flow better. Oop, it seems like it just popped loose. That did. Get that soldered quickly. Like you have to get a fresh piece of tape, it looks like. Yep, looks good. I'm going to trim the leads off on that, and just to make sure it's making contact on both sides of the board, I've got a little bit of elbow room. I'm going to go ahead and put some extra solder in on this side too, just to make sure it's flowing properly. There we go. And the other ones have flowed okay. All right, only 2 left. This one up here, which I believe is another 10. Yep, another 10. Its negative side is, careful, its negative side is going up. So the top side, yeah, and that makes sense because it's going to the ground plane. So this one, the second leg is a little weird. So I'm going to cut it off. It should make it a little easier to get to. There we go. Okay, so we have 2 caps here. Negative lead is to the top of the board. There we go. Okay, there's a negative. So there are a total of 10. There are 3 10s on this board. And I'm running out of 10s, although they're pretty common caps. I've actually got another whole stash over there. Put 10s up there. That is a 10. Short leg goes to the top here. We're going to fold it. I'm actually going to fold this one over on top of these resistors a little bit. We're going to stack it up because I don't want to get in the way of this mounting hole here. Kind of a pain in the butt, but I don't want to do that. All right. Get this in place. Okay. Now, since the ground plane's going to have a little more heat around it, heat absorption around it. Okay, this one. So it's nice and reflowed. Good. Okay, I'll take the legs off. Put that there. And we are down to the last one. We are on our last recap capacitor. You know what? I'm going to add a little extra solder on this one because it just didn't flow all the way through. It's not really necessary, but just in case anything happens. Sounds good. This one's that same problem the other one ran into where it doesn't really want to stick to this top heat plane. So there we go. They just popped. All right, last one. This guy down here. This is. Wait, let me make sure that was right. Or just double checking because I just want to make sure I didn't read that as 10 volts or as 10U. So I've got 1, 10. That's a 1. Another 10. 2.2. Remember that one. And this one should be another 10. Yep. Okay. So I do have 3 10s. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't reading that as 10 volts. Some caps will put the voltage first, and it's easy to misread them. So this is a 47 microfarad cap. And that is this little squat guy. This is the ones that my local electronics store had, so we're going to put that one in to make sure it's right. 4.7, yep, it's all wrapped around. Negative side is the short leg. On this guy, negative side is on the lower part of the thing, towards the bottom of the board. Last one, I'm excited. This guy off. No, like the others, he's being a little stubborn. We could trim him, but might as well have it whole. There we go. Okay, and it is again a 47 microfarad. It looks like a little U for the microfarad, and the negative side is again this bigger plane down here towards the bottom. So this one we're not going to fold. This one we're just going to set right in place. Still going to hold it, but I'm not going to fold it down. Just keep it straight. Okay, little flux here to make it flow better, and we are very close to being done with this recap. Looks good. Make sure it's in place. Get these pins out of here. Looks good. Negative is to the bottom side. This guy's good to go. All right, we have successfully recapped and retransistored this Aquarius here. Now, I'm waiting for circuit boards to come in for the second version, version 1.1 of the composite. So I'm actually going to clean this board up, put it back into its case for the short haul. And the way we clean it up, in case you're ever wondering, is I have an old toothbrush. You don't want to use this on your teeth. I'm going to blast this, particularly around the areas where we soldered with IPA alcohol. It's just 91%, which is more than enough. Some people say, oh, you should do 99% because it's, you know, it has less ambient water or whatever in it, or other solids. I'm just going to clean up around each of these capacitors that I did to kind of take some of that nasty flux off. Flux is great when it's flowing, but it's kind of like Vaseline when it gets on your hands. It's not much fun to deal with. So once I do that, once I get these areas brushed off, I spritz it and then just let it flow down and then drip off the bottom of the board. Do the same thing on the back in the areas where I desoldered here, down here. Again, get a little bit of this stuff. Flux can be corrosive depending on the flux you use. The stuff that I use is not, but I'm just going to kind of brush this up in each of the areas where I soldered up and put some flux on. And then again, we're going to, IPA is pretty cheap. I can refill this bottle easily. So we're going to do that. I'm going to let this dry overnight and then put it back in its case. And I will have replacement circuit boards in about 4 days, so we can put the RF shield, or sorry, the composite video in. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it.